48 hours, 3 repositories have stormed GitHub's trending page at once, one of them adding 1,700 stars in a single day, the fastest riser on the entire board. They're not models, they're not frameworks. They're something stranger. Famous engineers publishing the private instruction sets they give their own AI coding agents. The folders that, until this week, lived quietly on their machines, now public, permissively licensed, and being installed by thousands of developers a day. One belongs to arguably the best-known TypeScript educator alive. One comes from an engineering leader on the Chrome team who has spent a decade writing the books people learn web performance from, and the third from a veteran open-source maintainer doesn't offer you skills at all. It offers you an entire methodology and claims your agent will simply have it. Here's why this is worth 18 minutes, rather than a headline. I downloaded all 3 this morning and read them. Every skill file, the installers, the licenses, and the parts nobody screenshots, and they are not 3 versions of the same idea. They are 3 fundamentally different answers to the question, what should an AI agent be given? And one of these readmes, politely but unmistakably, argues against the entire category another one belongs to. There's also a single sentence buried in the smallest of the 3 that I think is the best thing anyone has written about this whole practice. I'll read it to you exactly, and I'll show you the 3-line skill file that made me laugh out loud, and the directory in one of these repos that quietly changes what writing instructions even means. Plan what a skill actually is in 60 seconds. Then each repo properly with their own words. Then the comparison, because the disagreement between these 3 is the actual story. Then the thing all 3 secretly agree on, which is where this field is going. Then the trust question nobody's asking about installing another person's judgment, and honest limits. Standards note, every quote in this video is verbatim from files I pulled this morning. All 3 repos are MIT licensed, verified from the license files themselves, and where I'm interpreting rather than quoting, I'll say so. Let's go. 60 seconds. What a skill actually is. Strip the branding. Folder containing a markdown file, conventionally called skill.md, with a few lines of metadata at the top, a name and a description of when to use it. Your coding agent scans the descriptions, and when a task matches, it loads the file and follows the instructions inside. That's it. No code required. It's a way of writing down how you work, in a place where the machine that works for you will actually read it. Which sounds trivial until you realize what it means at scale. For the first time, an engineer's accumulated judgment, the habits, the checklists, the hard-won taste, is a portable, installable artifact. And this week, 3 very different engineers decided theirs should be public. Repo One, the Toolbox. 35 small knives. The fastest riser belongs to Matt Pocock, POHcock, longtime TypeScript educator, and per his own README, a newsletter of around 60,000 developers. The repo is titled pointedly, Skills for Real Engineers, and the first line sets the tone. My agent skills that I use every day to do real engineering, not vibe coding. Then comes the sentence that declares war. Gently, I'll read it close to verbatim. Approaches like GSD, BMAD, and SpecKit try to help by owning the process. But while doing so, they take away your control and make bugs in the process hard to resolve. His alternative skills that are small, easy to adapt, and composable. They work with any model, hack around with them, make them your own. Hold that quote. It matters enormously in about 6 minutes. There are 35 skills in here, and reading them is a genuine pleasure because they have personality. There's one called Grill Me. Its entire contents, and I mean entire, are 3 lines. A name, a description that reads, a relentless interview to sharpen a plan or design, 1 metadata flag, and a body consisting of the single sentence, run a grilling session. That tiny file taught me 2 things about how this ecosystem is maturing. First, skills call other skills. Grill Me is a shortcut into a bigger grilling skill, which means these compose-like functions. Second, that metadata flag says the model is not allowed to invoke this one on its own. It's manual only. These files have an access control system now. Somebody thought about which instructions an agent may reach for itself and which require a human to ask. 2 more details that tell you who you're dealing with. The repository contains architecture decision records, formal documents explaining why he made structural choices for a folder of markdown files. That's an engineer treating his instructions with the same rigor as production code. And the installation section contains the most philosophically honest paragraph I've read in any README this year. There are 2 install paths, and he tells you plainly what each means. The plugin route is, his words, a managed, read-only bundle that updates when I ship. You subscribe rather than fork. The other route copies editable skill files into your project so you can hack on them and make them your own. Then pick one, installing both leaves you with every skill twice. Subscribe or fork. Take his judgment as a living feed, or take a snapshot and make it yours. That's not an install instruction, that's the entire question of this video stated as a menu. Repo Two, the pipeline. Quality gates end to end. The second repo comes from Adi Ozmani, engineering leadership on the Chrome team, and the author a large share of working developers learned performance from. His framing is different from the first word. Production-grade engineering skills. The pitch, verbatim skills that encode the workflows, quality gates, and best practices that senior engineers use. Packaged so agents follow them consistently across every phase of development. And the README centerpiece is a diagram of exactly that. A 6-stage pipeline: define, plan, build, verify, review, ship, with 8 commands mapped onto it, each carrying a principle. Listen to these, because it's decades of engineering culture compressed to fridge magnets. Spec before code. Small, atomic tasks, one slice at a time. Tests are proof measure before you optimize. Clarity over cleverness, faster is safer. Underneath sit 24 skills, and the names read like a senior engineer's syllabus. Code review and quality, incremental implementation, observability and instrumentation, API and interface design, performance optimization, Git workflow. But the thing that stopped me isn't a skill. It's a directory called evals with test cases and fixtures in it. Sit with that. He tests his instructions. There is a harness in this repository whose job is to check whether the skills actually change agent behavior the way they claim to. Most people write agent instructions the way people write New Year's resolutions: declared, never measured. This repo treats them as software, versioned, licensed, and tested. Remember that too, because the third repo arrives at the same idea from a completely different direction, and the convergence is the real headline. So where the first repo hands you a drawer of sharp small knives and says make them your own, this one hands you a opinionated, sequenced, gated, you don't adapt it so much as adopt it, which brings us to the third repo, which goes further still. Repo 3, the operating system. The third, called Superpowers, from a veteran open source maintainer under the handle Obra Ohbra, doesn't describe itself as a skills collection at all. Verbatim, a complete software development methodology for your coding agents, built on composable skills, and some initial instructions that make sure your agent uses them. The closing line of the pitch: the skills trigger automatically, your coding agent just has superpowers. Notice the verb shift across the three repos. The first says hack on these, the second says follow this. This one says it will simply happen. And the described flow is genuinely a methodology. Your agent doesn't start coding, it steps back and interviews you until a spec emerges. It shows you the design in readable chunks. Then it writes an implementation plan, and the stated quality bar for that plan is the best sentence of engineering humor I've read this year. Verbatim, clear enough for an enthusiastic junior engineer with poor taste, no judgment, no project context, and an aversion to testing to follow. That's funny, and it's also exactly right, because that junior engineer is a precise description of a language model on a bad day. Write plans for that reader and everything downstream gets safer. Then the doctrine: strict red-green test-driven development. Yagni, yag, ni. Don't repeat yourself. And then the part that makes this the most ambitious of the three: sub-agent-driven development. The system spawns worker agents to execute each task, inspects and reviews their output, and continues. Their own words: it's not uncommon for your agent to work autonomously for a couple hours at a time without deviating from the plan. Hours unattended, by design. Hold that for the trust section. 3 more verified facts. It's portable to an almost absurd degree. The README lists 11 different agent harnesses it installs into. Essentially every coding agent you've heard of, and several you haven't. It's on the official plugin marketplace, plus its own. And, standing rule of this channel, find the invoice. There's a commercial services email for enterprise support, sitting right in the README. Free methodology, paid handholding. Open core, cleanly done, disclosed in plain sight. 14 skills. The fewest of the 3 and the deepest, because one of them is about to steal this entire video. The best sentence in the whole gold rush. Inside that third repo is a skill called writing skills. A skill about writing skills, and it contains the line I promised you, verbatim. Writing skills is test-driven development applied to process documentation. And then the method, which I'll read almost exactly. You write test cases, pressure scenarios with sub-agents, watch them fail, which is baseline behavior. Write the skill, watch tests pass, agents comply. And refactor, close loopholes, followed by the core principle. And this is the sentence: if you didn't watch an agent fail without the skill, you don't know if the skill teaches the right thing. That is a genuinely important idea, stated perfectly. An instruction file is a claim. The claim that reading it changes behavior. Claims can be tested. Most people's agent instructions are folklore. Things that feel right, accumulated by superstition, never once checked against what the agent does without them. And here's the convergence I flagged. The second repo built an evals directory. The third repo wrote failing tests for documentation. 2 famous engineers independently arrived at the same conclusion in the same month that instructions for agents deserve the same discipline as code. When practitioners with different philosophies converge on one practice, that practice is the future. The Gold Rush headline is 3 repos trending. The actual news is that this craft just acquired a testing culture. The disagreement, because it's the real story. Now put the three side by side because they answer the same question three incompatible ways. The first is a toolbox. 35 small, composable, editable pieces. You stay the engineer, the skills are your knives. Its whole philosophy is that frameworks which own the process take away your control, his word. The second is a pipeline. 24 skills arranged into a gated lifecycle with a command per phase. You're still driving, but the road is paved, and the exits are marked. The third is an autopilot. 14 skills plus a bootstrap that makes them fire automatically, spawning subworkers that run for hours. You set the destination and review the journey afterwards. And here's the delicious part. The first repo's README is functionally a critique of the third repo's category, written before this week. Made them neighbors on the trending page. Small tools that you control, versus a process that owns itself. I'm not going to declare a winner, because I think both critiques are correct about different failure modes. The Toolbox critique is right that when an automated process goes wrong, debugging the process is miserable, you're inside someone else's machine. The autopilot answer is right that consistency beats talent applied inconsistently. A decent methodology enforced every time outperforms brilliant judgment applied when you remember. Pick based on which failure you fear more, losing control or losing discipline. There's even a tell in the numbers. 35, 24, 14. The count falls as the ambition rises. The toolbox needs many pieces because you assemble them. The operating system needs few because they interlock. Neither is wrong. They're different bets on where judgment should live, in you, in a process, or in the machine. Skills are the new .files, with one dangerous difference. Here's the pattern underneath all three, and one of the repos states it in file paths. Personal skills per the third repo's own documentation live in a hidden folder in your home directory, and verbatim, several major agents also recognize a shared .agents directory as a cross-runtime alias. .directories in your home folder, carrying your personal configuration, shared and forked on GitHub. We have seen this movie. These are .files the Vim configurations and shell profiles engineers have published and borrowed for 20 years. The culture is identical. Publish yours, read everyone's, steal the good parts. And the deepest lesson of .files culture transfers exactly. The value was never in installing someone else's config wholesale. It was in reading it, because a config file is an engineer's taste, made legible, and taste is the thing that's actually scarce. But there's one difference, and it's not small. Your Vim config configured a tool that obeyed you. A skill configures an agent that acts. .files shaped how your editor behaved when you typed. These files shape what an autonomous system does, what it runs, edits, reviews, and ships, sometimes per one of these repos, for hours without you. Which changes the stakes of borrowing, and it's why the next 2 minutes matter. The trust question nobody's asking. All three repos are MIT licensed. I read the license files, all three are from engineers with reputations worth protecting, and I'd still tell you, read before you install. Every file. Here's why, concretely. These are not just markdown, I checked. 2 of the 3 ship a hooks directory, and in there are shell scripts and hook configurations, code that runs including at session start. Perfectly legitimate hooks are how skills integrate properly, and it means its only instructions is already false. Installing a skills repo executes things. Instructions are obeyed. Even the pure markdown is, functionally, privileged input to a system with your permissions. A skill that says always run the tests is wonderful. The same mechanism could say anything, and your agent's whole job is to comply. Reputation is a real signal, and reputation is not a review. And autonomy multiplies everything. The third repo's proudest feature, agents working unattended for hours, triggered automatically, is also, by definition, the widest blast radius in this ecosystem. That's not an accusation, it's arithmetic. The more a system does without you watching, the more its instructions deserve your reading time before they get your permission. The good news, these are the most readable installs in software. 35 files, 24/14, mostly short markdown. You can genuinely read all 3 repos in an evening, which is exactly what I did. Make that the norm you hold here and for every skills repo after this one, because the next 100 authors will not all be famous. And the habit you build on the trustworthy ones is the habit that protects you on the rest. What I'd actually do, a practical path. Tonight read, don't install. All 3, an evening. You'll learn more engineering from these 90-odd files than from most courses, because this is what senior judgment looks like written down. Steal 3 patterns in your own words. Not the files, the moves. The relentless interview before building the plan. Written for that junior engineer with no context. Spec before code, rewrite them in your voice for your stack. Then write one skill of your own, using the loop from the meta skill. Pick the mistake your agent makes most. Watch it fail without the skill. Write the smallest instruction that fixes it, watch it pass. That single exercise puts you ahead of almost everyone installing these wholesale, because you'll have tested judgment where they have borrowed folklore. If you do install, start with the editable path on the Toolbox repo or single commands from the pipeline repo. Run the autopilot on a throwaway project first. Its own bar for plans is a reader with no judgment. Extend it the same respect and verify before trusting it with real work. Honest limits, 4. 1. I read all 3 end to end. I have not run them in anger across weeks of real work. Reading tells you the design, only use tells you the fit. 2. These encode their contexts, TypeScript educator, Chrome scale web engineering, a maintainer's methodology. If your world is embedded firmware or data engineering, the patterns transfer, the specifics may not. Skills are opinions, check whose. 3. These repos are moving daily. Counts, features, and install paths in this video are accurate, as of my poll this morning, and will drift. The philosophies won't. 4. Famous is not the same as best for you. The trending page selects for reach. Somewhere there's an unknown engineer whose 14 files fit your work better than any of these. The skill of reading skills which you now have matters more than any particular set. Step back. What actually happened this week is bigger than 3 repositories trending. Engineering Judgement became a publishable artifact. For 20 years, the craft's tacit half, when to spec, how to review, what a plan owes its reader, lived in heads and hallways, transferred slowly through mentorship. This week, 3 of the field's most experienced practitioners wrote theirs down in a format a machine executes and gave it away. And they disagreed about almost everything except the part that matters. That this stuff can be written down at all, that it should be shared, and quietly from 2 directions at once, that it must be tested. A field acquires a testing culture exactly once. This one just did. The gold rush framing gets one thing wrong, though. In a gold rush, the miners rarely got rich, the people selling shovels did. Here, the gold isn't in anyone's repo. It's the realization that your own accumulated judgment, the checklist in your head, the questions you always ask, the mistake you never make twice, is now a durable, portable, improvable asset. These 3 engineers just showed you the format. So here's my question, and I'll pin it below. Which are you, the toolbox, the pipeline, or the autopilot? And more interesting, name the one skill from your own practice you'd publish. The habit that would survive being written down for a reader, with no context. I'll pin the best answers, because honestly that comment section could become a better skills repo than any of the 3 in this video. Every link, all 3 repositories. The exact files I quoted including the meta skill and the evals directory. And the licenses is in the description. Read them yourself. That's the entire point. That's the standard here. The real explanation, sourced in plain English, with the quotes verbatim and the disagreements presented fairly. If you'd rather own your tools than rent them, subscribe. That's what we do every single day. I'll see you in the next one.